We have a quorum? Okay, turns out we do have a quorum. We are okay to begin. So welcome, everybody. We appreciate you, most of you being online today and not wanting to venture out into the heat of Salt Lake, apparently. So we're thankful that for those of you who are here virtually or present. Andrea, do you need a roll call on this so we know who's here? Oh, I'm going to go ahead and in the room.
Yeah, and I'll read the online.
Yep.
Beth Holbrook, UTA. This is my 2.0 meeting here today.
Kevin Cromar, Utah Air Quality Board. Microphone.
Thank you. Wayne Benyon, Regional Council staff.
I'm Mark Shepherd, Chair.
Andrew Gruber with WFRC.
Andrea Pearson with WFRC, and I'm going to read the names that are online. Oh, sure. Sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Rob Daly, Holiday, City of Holiday.
Mike Sopchak, WFRC.
Rosie Hernandez, WFRC.
Stanley.
Mayor Hall, Bluffdale City.
Ben Withrich, Wasatch Front staff.
Chrissy Dahlberg, Wasatch Front staff.
Megan Townsend, Wasatch Front staff.
Ned Hacker with Wasatch Front staff.
Byron Head, Wasatch Front staff.
Marcia White, same.
And I'd just like to, before we read the folks online, acknowledge that Byron is our newest WFRC staffer in the Community and Economic Development Group. So welcome, Byron.
Okay, and those that we have joining us online are Tammy Tran, Alex Beam, Ben Hewitt, Jim Harvey, Brett Slater, Jay Aguilar, Krista Reister, Todd Johnson, Ivan Marrero, Taylor Hill, Leif Elder, Kevin Jepson, Ann Granado, Brad Palmer, Jaron Robertson, Dennis Pay, Blake Thomas, and Shul Bishop. If I didn't get your name, please type it in the chat so we can get you on the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. We have minutes to approve from our last meeting on June 16th. They were attached to the agenda when it was sent out. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? We have a motion on those minutes. Go ahead.
So moved. Oh, my apologies, Mayor.
Well, Beth has motioned to approve them.
I'll second them, Mr. Chair.
All right, and Jim Harvey has seconded that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, the minutes will stand, and we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Andrew for our report.
So thanks, Mr. Chair. And as I understand it, for your chair's report, you're looking for me to do a brief legislative update.
That is what I would hope that you would do, unless you have other things you'd like to talk about.
Well, you're the chair, so I'll do whatever you'd like me to do.
I would love it if you would give us a brief legislative update and,
Okay. All right, thank
tell us
you.
about interim.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Nice to see you all here in the room and online. I wanted to give a brief update about some issues that legislatively related specifically to transportation. Okay, there's a lot of other stuff happening, of course, but this body works on short-range transportation issues. So two things. One, just reporting yesterday was transportation interim. And at the legislative interim meetings, there was a presentation that we participated in along with our partners in all the transportation agencies, specifically about transportation funding. It was a deep dive into the big picture of transportation funding needs and revenue sources, where we were updating on the process of all of our agencies in the development of the next version of Utah's Unified Transportation Plan that we're in the process of developing right now in collaboration with all of our partners. And then exploring different funding issues in state funding, state roads, local roads, transit, active transportation. It was, I'm not going to go into any more detail now, other than to let you know that we're going to send a link out to the materials from that meeting, as well as video from that meeting in the WFRC newsletter that Mike will be sending out in the next few days. Okay. Then related to that, there is also, I think you all already know this, but there's a group, the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. This is this state created body that has a mix of the governor and legislative leaders and local elected officials and private sector folks that are coming together to deal with particularly with growth issues. And there is in fact a growth and transportation working group of that UEOC, and that growth and transportation working group itself has 3 subgroups. So our summer has been full of lots of fun meetings via the UEOC. What I wanted to share with you is that specifically there's a transportation funding work group, and I see Layfelder with UDOT is organizing and leading that group, and we've been partnering with him and others. That group has developed a preliminary set of recommendations around transportation funding that are going to be presented to the Growth and Transportation Working Group on August 31st. And I'll just share with you just a few of them that relate directly to the work that we do here, particularly for local governments. One is that you all know, or most of you probably know or remember, that one of the sources of funding for local transportation and transit are the so-called quarters. These are local option sales taxes, where it's 1/4%, 0.25%, that have been imposed across our region. Also, there was the authorized a few years ago, another, not 1/4, but 0.20, 1/5%, specifically for transit. The counties have the authority to impose that. It hasn't been imposed yet in any of the counties in our region. Summit County is actually the only county in the state that's imposed it to the state up to this point. That local option expires statutorily June 30 of 2023. So we've had discussion about at least extending or perhaps eliminating that deadline to give our region more time to have that opportunity to impose that local option to generate more funding for transit. We've also had some discussion about, well, perhaps it should be increased to be a regular quarter from 0.20 to 0.25. We've also talked about the possibility that if it were to be increased, perhaps the cities and or the counties should be able to utilize some of those resources for city and county needs, maybe that relate to transit service. But that's one of the items that's under discussion right now. Another one I'll note, continuing to speak about local transportation funding, is you all are presumably at least generally aware that we have in Utah, again, under UDOT's leadership, what's called a road usage charge. This is an alternative to paying the gas tax, where now on a voluntary basis, drivers can sign up and have their mileage recorded and then pay a fee rather than paying gas tax. You can pay a fee based on the mileage that's being driven. Right now, 100% of the revenue from that road usage charge, or the RUC, is going to UDOT. Whereas the gas tax, the motor fuel tax, as you know, 70% of it goes to UDOT, 30% of it goes to locals via the BNC formula. It was set up that way initially with the RUC because the cost of administering the program actually exceed the revenues coming in. So we figured it made sense for all the revenues to go to UDOT to stand up the program. Eventually, as more cars, when more drivers get in and into that RUC program, it'll go into the black. And so what we're talking about is making sure that once we do go into the black, that the locals participate similarly to the way they do with the motor fuel tax. I'll mention 2 other items. We've been having some conversation, as everybody knows, about zero fare transit, right? Beth obviously is well aware of this. February was so-called free fare February. We are conducting a joint study, WFRC, UDOT, UTA, Mountain Land Association of Governments, of the possibilities and implications of instituting a zero fare system in its entirety. The implications for revenue loss, the implications for costs of paying for fare equipment, what it means for ridership, what it means for security. I think it's fair to say, Beth, that there's a good amount of interest from the legislature and others in the possibilities there. So that's one of the items that we recommended to keep evaluating that. The last one I'll note is there has been an acknowledgement, a healthy acknowledgement, I think, of the changing economy and the fact that somebody else said this yesterday. I don't get credit for it, but somebody said 15 years ago, you used to go to the mall and now the mall comes to you with online delivery, right? So much of our, particularly accelerated by the pandemic, so much of our economy is now based on online orders and delivery. And then what that means is you've got these big box trucks traveling through residential neighborhoods much more than they used to, putting pressure on local roads that are really not designed to accommodate that level or weight of traffic. And so that's changed our economy, and it's changed the impact on our infrastructure. So Colorado relatively recently instituted what they call a retail delivery fee, where 27 cents per retail delivery is being imposed whenever Amazon or Uber Eats or whatever retail service comes to the end buyer. There's a fee added on to help cover transportation costs. That's a possibility, something to consider as we deal with this new impact of the new economy and how it impacts transportation. There's other items also on the list, but I figured I would just hit a few of those as highlights.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Andrew? This is Tammy. I just had a question on that. Is that a state tax or state fee for the delivery, or is it a city fee?
Yeah, great question, Mayor Tran. In Colorado, so they're the only state that's ever done it, or that has done it so far. It is the state imposing that retail delivery fee, and then the revenues come in, and then there's various methods for distribution of the revenues. That's how Colorado is doing it. I would dare say it would be a lot, if it's going to be done anywhere, including here, it would be a lot simpler to have one fee imposed than have it be imposed by a multitude of entities. But then the question is, if the state's imposing it, what are the uses? What happens? Does a share of it come to local governments who, of course, as I just noted, are having the impact on local roads from these delivery trucks? So all of these, we're in the infancy of talking about these ideas, but how it would get imposed, if it was, and its distribution and including locals is something we'll need to pay attention to. Yeah, and then Leif is just from UDOT is noting in the chat that the delivery fee is collected and remitted consistent with a sales tax, with the sales tax methodology, at least in Colorado.
Very interesting. Yeah. So
Could I just ask a quick question on regarding the ruck? So if you have an electric vehicle, you can voluntarily enter this program and have them charge you for your mileage, but if you don't enter it, you're not being charged. You're just getting, right now, you just get an increased registration fee, right? So why would you register for that?
Well, that's a great question. And what I'm going to do, Leif should be anticipating this, is I'm going to phone a friend, because I imagine that Leif or Jay or our other pals at UDOT may be better equipped to answer that question, or Ivan or anybody, or Ben Hewitt. Look at all of our friends from UDOT on the line here, or Brad, look at all of them. Go ahead, Leif, you want to take it or hand that off to somebody else?
Sure. I'd be happy to take it. It's a RUC question. Could you just restate, make sure I got that?
Well, I'm not sure I really understand the program, but my basic question is, I have an electric vehicle. I have an increased registration fee now, I think. State registration fee to cover, I think that's the case, because I do get that I'm using the road, but I'm not buying gas anymore. And so there's an infrastructure cost there, which I totally get. But if the RUC is voluntary and you're going to basically volunteer to pay for the miles you're using, why would somebody register that? Is it they're just being a good citizen?
Yeah, so the way that works, that's a great question. A great question. And so that fee that you're paying, it's an annual fee, it's $120. And the way it works, if you sign up with the RUC program, you no longer pay that $120 fee. You only pay the RUC charge, and that RUC charge is capped at $120 annually. So you won't pay more, but there's a probability, and probably a good probability, that you'll pay less than $120. So that's kind of the incentive there.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's really trying to incentivize people to sign up so that UDOT or the state can start to gather data on how do we start to pay for our road infrastructure as people start to transition more to electric. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, you've got it.
Thanks, Leif. Anything else, Andrew?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Amongst the other items that you didn't mention, did IFTA come up at all? The international fuel tax agreement, was that one of the other items that's been discussed?
No, not specifically. And what Kevin is getting at is interstate trucking and how interstate trucking is charged as they're traveling state to state. So, well, no, but for Kevin, we had a little bit of discussion about the impacts of interstate electric vehicle driving. And I don't know a lot about this, but I do know that at least some areas are considering, or there is consideration of a charge for interstate drivers for a per kilowatt hour tax. Because same thing, those EV interstate trucks are not paying the motor fuel tax. So there's some consideration, Leif, if you know more about this, you could help me also, but about a per kilowatt hour tax for on electric vehicles that are going interstate. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Andrew. We're going to go ahead and move on. We got public comment period. I don't have any notes of public comment. Do we have anyone here that was up from the public to comment? Okay, then we'll move on to item number 4, and that's our Transportation Improvement Program board modifications. And we'll ask Ben Withers to come up and enlighten us.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. So today with Transportation Improvement Program, it is. Panic from last meeting, just a little nervous, a little gun shy. Anyway, so we have 2 items today as part of the Transportation Improvement Program. Just wanted to highlight this in the beginning so it doesn't become a little confusing as we move through it. We have a board modification today that's before Transcom, and then we'll have opportunity as directed by the chair to move into a request for action to recommend the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program along with the air quality conformity finding. The board modification is on our existing tip, which is the 22-27 tip. And in your meeting materials, you will have some information that's identified on some tables. There are 2 tables, and those tables will include all of the board modifications for this particular board mod, which is board mod number 9, since the 2022-2027 tip was approved last August. So going through each of those projects, we'll quickly review them for you and then request your approval. The first project is located in Salt Lake. This is in Magna. This sidewalk project actually out on 2820 South goes between 7736 West to 7440 West. This is a Safe Routes to School project. What this project will do is construct sidewalk on the north side of 2820 South. Currently on this particular facility, there's an elementary school, there's a charter school, as well as this is part of the Parkway Boulevard project, which will tie in the Mountain View corridor. It also will have access to the Ritter Trail. So all of the active transportation traffic along the Mountain View corridor that'll be in the area of 2700 West and or around 2820 South or Parkway Boulevard will be included on this particular facility. So this board modification, as they were preparing, identified that it was short of funding for this project. Magna went to their committee and they were able to identify an additional 300,000 to bring to the table. And they're requesting 815,000 plus of additional TAP funds for the construction of this sidewalk with the total project cost of a little more than $2 million. The next board modification is a project up in Weber County. or Morgan, actually. This is on just off of 84 there. It's the Devil Slide Bridge area. It's the bridge over 5800 East. So that's the location of the bridge. And if you're not familiar with the area or why the name Devil Slide, that section in the blue is actually Devil Slide. And here's what Devil Slide looks like. So pretty cool if you're ever up there driving along the I-84. This particular project is for this bridge on 5300 East over the Weber River that goes there into the concrete. Let me back that up just a little. This bridge is over 80 years old. And over the course of time, a lot of times, maybe not as much this year as in the past, but the river water, the water levels are over the structure. And also on this bridge, the parapets and the curbing are wearing out. So this project was initially to go out for, to be constructed in 2020 or advertised in 2020. But because of the negotiations and the dealings with Union Pacific, as well as the cement factory thereby, it was delayed. And then when the project was advertised, the bids came in a lot higher than the engineer's estimate. And so the project team worked together. They came back, they had requested additional funds. But then when the project was awarded again, it came in over the engineer's estimate. So the request is to add the additional funds so that they can advertise this project. So they're requesting 1.1 million in additional funds, and these funds will actually come from the Region 1's Transportation Solution Program. And then that'll bring our project cost up to 7.7 million plus. The next project, or that brings us to the next table. And the next table identifies the recreational trails program for the federal fiscal year 2022. Now, that's about coming to the end, but this process starts a little early. I mean, the end of 2022. But that's what this is called, is the 2022 Recreational Trails Program. So the Recreational Trails Program was authorized by Congress back in the Ice-T era, back in 1991, and it has continued up through our current transportation bill, which is the Investment and Jobs Act. or the-
Ben, just the people are laughing around me. That's just so everybody knows. Ben is talking about ISTEA, which is the acronym for the federal infrastructure bill. He's not like, oh, that was the lemonade days when
That's a
I
good
thought he
point.
I
meant
thought he
the
was talking
artist.
Ice Baby.
I thought so too.
oh,
And I'm thinking it was a little earlier than 91, Ben, but you know, Ice Baby. Go.
okay. Okay, well,
Sorry, Sugar,
we've
go
all
ahead.
got our own interpretations apparently. Go on, Ben.
That is good. Thank you. But the new transportation bill, the IIJA, there is authorized this program, and this is a program that typically brings about $1.6 million into the state of Utah. And so these projects, they're for non-motorized or for trail, and they're for the upkeep through the recreational system throughout the state of Utah. These projects are selected and administered throughout the state by the Utah State's Park and Recreation Divisions. It is for projects that are on non-motorized as well as motorized facilities. Funds are generated through the revenue from the federal motor tax or fuel tax, and these funds are apportioned to the state every year. So here in the state of Utah for 2023, we actually had 17 projects totaling more than 1.4 million in federal funds. With the local match, that brought us up to about $6.9 million worth of projects. So they had a significant match to the program. There were 5 projects totaling a little more than $1 million in the Wasatch Front area. So that is all of the projects before you for this board modification.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? Okay, appreciate that. So we need or committee, we need a motion to recommend this to the board. And the board will take that up at their meeting next week.
I would make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. And item 4B has been mentioned is to recommend approval of the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program and the Air Quality Conformity Program. And this represents billions of dollars for those of you who aren't keeping track over the next 6 years invested into Utah. So Ben, maybe you can fill us in on, bring us up to speed on what that is.
Awesome.
that comes
Thank
about.
you. So let me maybe back us up just a sliver. So while I was out in the woods, there
Yeah.
we go.
While I was
So
out in the
I
woods.
There I was contemplating as you're watching the flickers of the flame, thinking, what significant event do I got coming up here in the near future? And then all of a sudden, item 4B, of course. Well, it's the action of the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program. This is a big deal, brand new. And as the chair pointed out, over billions of dollars of projects that are coming along the Wasatch Front over the next 6 years. That's pretty significant. That's pretty awesome. So this Transportation Improvement Program is the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program. And as you're aware, the program is what implements our highway, our transit, our active transportation projects along the Wasatch Front. So that's essentially from Brigham City all the way down to Utah County. It's a 6-year program that identifies those projects. It's for both of the urban areas, the Salt Lake West Valley and the Ogden-Layton urbanized areas. Now, as part of the TIP document, we do have projects that are identified in Tooele and the projects in the Morgan. But as far as our programming exactly, and we'll get into those that we program or that this body recommends for approval, those happen within the urbanized areas. But it's all of the projects that are funded with federal, state, and local funds, and it's for all of the cities, it's for UDOT, and it's for UTA. So it implements our long-range plan, the highway transit and active transportation projects in the regions. It helps us meet the short-range needs, and then it provides for the maintenance of our existing transportation system. So all of these projects are what make up that multiple $billion. They include the new construction, the rehab, maintenance, safety, and ITS project, transit, operating and maintenance, and pedestrian and bike. Well, words are pretty exciting, but let's look at a few pictures here. So if you'll recall in this past go around, this body made recommendations of some brand new STP projects. These particular STP projects, just to highlight a couple, there was one in Perry that'll build a new section of road, tie it into the existing 1100 South with anticipation of the completion of 12th West. There's the widening and improvement there of 7200 West, which is probably one of the only urban gravel roads. Not really, it's an asphalt road, but it is going apart and it really needs some attention there. So then this body also within the urban areas, they identified those projects to be funded with the CMAQ projects. We have the Welby-Jacob Canal Trail there in Riverton. We've got the Green Bike expansions in the Ogden and the Salt Lake. We've got West Point's roundabout intersection improvements, as well as a transit center there on 2nd South. A lot of these projects, as you'll recall, when we reviewed them and approved them, continue to build upon the system that we have, which is a top-notch system along the Wasatch Front. Then we have the TAP projects. And this year we were able to put a significant amount of TAP programs or projects in the program because the IIJA lifted or elevated the amount of funds that were into the TAP program. We've got the trail there in the Centerville. We've got a shared use path along 7th East in Salt Lake and several others. Well, not only in that program, but it identifies all of the projects in the TIF program. So all of those lists that went through were the projects that were currently on the program or were under design or are under construction. Well, the TIF projects are those significant big capacity projects that we're looking at. One of them that you're all familiar with is a project there in the West Davis corridor. So with the courtesy of UDOT, some real quick snapshot of what's happening out there. Significant improvements for our north-south travel through Davis County. We also had the rehab and maintenance type projects. These are happening through all of the communities along the Wasatch Front. We have our safety and ITS, which is intelligent transportation systems. And then we have the transit operations and maintenance improvements that are happening all along the Wasatch Front. And then we have our pedestrian and bicycle facilities. So a lot of projects that are happening along the Wasatch Front that have been identified in the Transportation Improvement Program represents millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands of jobs, excuse me, the economic growth and development, mobility and access, the preservation of life, and promote the quality of life that we've been accustomed to. And it's becoming quite popular as others move into our area. But the tip has to be financially constrained, has to conform to air quality, needs to be reviewed by the public and then approved by the regional council. So if you'll recall, we took these documents, we brought these information to you here in June. Excuse me. We had the TIP program or the ARP programs. We had all the other federal aid programs. We had the transit section. We had the conformity information. We brought this to you back in June, on the 16th of June, and we received recommendation and approval from you to go out for public review and comment. That started on the 25th of June and it concluded on the 30th of July. During that time, we had 2 public open houses, one on the 6th in Salt Lake, one on the 13th in the Ogden-Layton area. Then we took this information and we had available, it was before the public comment period concluded, but it was when our TAC committee met and we took it to them, reviewed this information with them in preparation to bring that information to you today. And then it is our anticipation today that we'll have the information necessary for you to take action, to make recommendations to the regional council for approval when they meet next Thursday. Then what happens after that? Well, then we combine all our information with the other MPO's information and the UDOT's information, and that goes out for federal review by Federal Highways and Federal Transit Agency during the month of September. And then hopefully come that first Monday in October, or they're close by, we have the new approved 2023-2028 tip. And that when you can cook us some more over, it'll be awesome. So what is that? Well, and just a reminder right there, the next round is going to start here at the end of this month. So when we went out for public review and comment, some of the things that we did to help encourage and get this information out in front of the public to allow them some time to review and make comments. On our our website, we had the Transportation Improvement Program, which explains each of the programs. But with that, we had an interactive map where you could actually go in and you could click on a project and say, let's look at this little project up here in Hooper. Well, it'll highlight. Yeah, highlight it. So there we are. So on the web page, when you highlight on the project, it'll actually bring you up a street view, so you can go in there and scan around and see what the existing conditions are, at least when Google drove the road. And then it tells you a little information about the project value, the funding source, and a little description. And then it leaves a spot where the public can leave a comment, or any individual could leave a comment. So that was all available for the public. We also went out through our newsletter. We went out, we had the media come to one of our open houses, and we just had an opportunity to solicit and to gather quite a few comments. In your meeting materials, you have a summary of those comments. But in addition to that, you also have the list of the given comments. And on that, just so you're aware, there were 64 comments that came on specific projects on the interactive map. There were 15 comments that came through the interactive map as a general comment. We had 12 specific comments from the open houses. And then we had approximately 4,485 views of the social media content promoting the TIP public comment period. and 253 engagements with those posts that are likes or shares or other of those indications on the social media. So that's the information we have for you for information in preparation for your recommendation on the approval of the TIP.
Thank you, Ben. Any comments for Ben? Andrew?
Ben, thank you very much. I don't have a comment. My request to you is, can you or Wayne give just a brief summary of what kind of feedback we did get from the public, please? I mean, you said we got around 300 comments. I know you prepared a one-page summary, but like, what's examples of what we heard from the public? Key themes.
We will, in fact, if we could go back to the slideshow, because I ended early. There's 2 more slides I just wanted to highlight quick. And that was the preference, your point, Andrew, is what we do with public comments.
Well, yes, that's a good,
So if I
but
can maybe hit
what
that.
were the comments? And okay, yeah,
So-
carry on.
So when what we do is, so we collect those public comments and then we make documentation of the comments. We take them to the project meetings, and where appropriate, we implement those comments into the project. And so maybe to finish this thought, I just wanted to highlight 3 projects that we received public comment on that are currently under construction. Part of the issue that we have with the public is sometimes we're 6+ years ahead of the project when we're public comment. So they give a comment, but then they see nothing happening and they wonder, oh, that was for nothing. But in reality, it's been documented and it's included in the project discussion and implementation. And so, for example, there's a pin, this is a project identification number 15688, which is a design on I-80. Now, how long have we been studying I-80? Quite a few years ago, but now we're finally getting some earth moving around on there. On I-80, due to public comment and input, the structures on 13th East and 17th East have been widened to add exclusive bike lanes. That was from public comment. Significant big project, but it's just happening now. But those comments could have been received over several years prior.
Just to be clear, when you say widen for bike lanes, you don't mean on I-80, you mean the overpasses
The overpass
over I-80.
on 13th, yes.
Just making
Yes.
sure. Okay.
Yes, it's a high speed. We got electric bikes now. We figure maybe. No, but 2 others. There's a project on I-15 northbound. There at 5300 south. The project will remove a yield condition and create an acceleration lane coming on to I-15. Now, all of those facilities are a UDOT project, but because of public comment, UDOT's implementing that acceleration lane onto I-15, and that one has been awarded and construction is pending. In Tooele, there's a project, and this is on SR 36. Due to public comment, the project will add barriers down the median from Neal's Junction to Sunset Lane to eliminate crossover crashes and improve safety. And currently that project's working on or in design. So back to your question then, Andrew, on the summary. Wayne, do you want to take first stab? So go ahead.
So if we could go back a couple, yeah, you can see this, what I'm gonna, yeah, this one. I'll just highlight a couple of these. You can read them as well, but there were quite a number of comments received on the desire for protecting more bike lanes, like not only striping pavement for bikes, but making sure there's adequate separation between the bikes and the vehicles. So there were quite a few comments there. And then there were a number of comments made in relation to a desire to spend more money on transit capacity rather than on road widening or new construction. And gratefully, there's probably a more balanced approach across modes today and going into the future than ever. before in this state. There are restrictions on some of the uses of particular funding sources. And so we're grateful that significant progress has been made. And I'll just note that there are multiple significant transit capacity improvements identified in the TIP, in addition to the roadway projects, that are especially or seem to get attention as well. So those are just a couple of the comments. You can see the other types of comments there.
And thank you, Ben. And I just want to shout out to Ben and the whole group. I mean, the interactive map was wonderful. I was kind of hesitant. I was like, can I make a comment? So I actually did make a couple comments. And then, I immediately got a response from Ben. So it was really nice. And maybe it was just because my name was on that thing that said SLC Gov, but Ben came back right away with some education for me on my comments. And but it was very appreciative. The map was wonderful. The whole interaction was good. And so I really appreciated all the work there. So thank you.
Thank you. Wayne was actually the masterpiece behind the response there. So coordinated effort, all Wayne. Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin.
The examples you gave, and I think it's true with my intuition as well, is anything to do with public safety, bike safety, pedestrian safety. That's an area where the public, more so than a city engineer, has a lot more to add to projects. I wonder if for the TAP projects that mostly focus on that, if we could do a little bit better outreach, not just at the end of the process, but like when you do your site visits. A couple of years ago, I remember Ben told us a story. They happened to be on the site and they were telling them there's a safety issue. They didn't really see it. I think a bus buzzed them or a car buzzed by, like, oh, I know what you mean now. I wonder if there's a way we could do a little more outreach at site visit days for TAP projects to get that better public sense of the real safety issues at the local level. Just a thought, because those happen to be your examples. And I think that's where the public does have more to add than, say, a city engineer.
That's a great point, if I might. So, because of COVID, we've found interesting ways in how we're able to do our site visits a little safer, but involve more. And we were asked by the technical advisory committees to maybe make that available to other TAC committee members. And we could probably do that for Transcom if appropriate, so that you could log on. You would know the schedule basically where we'd be, but if you had an interest, you could log on to see when we're out on the field review on that particular site, be part of it. We are going to ask that the questions be minimized because we're trying to do about 50 projects per urban area in 2 days, and it's a pretty quick pace. But we would welcome that additional participation and opportunities to have feet on the ground, or you're welcome to ride around with us. That's fun too.
Not me, the public. We'd have to let them know in some way, but especially with the technology option where people could log on or see the schedule, I wonder if a little bit more promotion would be useful or valuable. Just a suggestion.
You want to ride around with Ben. Come on. Well, Ben, thank you. And a huge shout out to staff as a whole. This is, as we mentioned, it's billions of dollars of disbursements over a 6-year period of time. This is the heart of what we do, and this is an enormous amount of work on staff's part. So thank you for all you do. So we need a motion to recommend approval of the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program and the air quality conformity finding.
I move we recommend Regional Council approve the TIP and the conformity analysis.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, that passes there, and we'll move on to item 5, which is to talk about funding opportunities for local governments. And we will turn the time over to Wayne Benyon. We're glad you're here, Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right. I think we've got a little slide presentation to share with you, as we usually do this time of year, prior to the letter of intent, request for letters of intent that will go out at the end of this month. So with that, I'll just remind you that one of the key purposes of WFRC is to help local governments accomplish their objectives. And gratefully, we've got one of the ways we're able to do that is through funding, federal funding that WFRC has the opportunity to administer or assist, as the case may be, with assist local governments in pursuing that funding. The purpose of today's presentation is to remind you about these programs, introduce you to the program leads so that you'll have a face to put with a particular program, and point you to the funding programs announcement at the end of the month that I mentioned earlier. All right. So this is a list of the 9 programs administered or assisted by WFRC. I'll note that 2 of these are new this year, the Carbon Reduction Program and the Station Area Plan Technical Assistance Program. I want to briefly mention in regard to the Carbon Reduction Program, the objective of this is to reduce on-road carbon dioxide emissions. And as you read through the information, the guidance on this program, you'll see that it's very similar to the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program. And so we're excited about opportunities to take advantage of this additional funding for air quality. It's about half the amount that the region currently receives in the way of CMAQ funding.
Remind us roughly what that amount is then.
About $4 million a year for the carbon reduction program across the region.
Okay.
2.5 roughly in the Salt Lake urbanized area, Salt Lake West Valley urbanized area, and about 1.5 in the Ogden-Layton urbanized area. Let's see, and I'll just note that the station area plan.
Wayne, I'm sorry, can I just interject?
Please.
Are you done talking about the new carbon program? Were you going to say anything else about that?
No.
Okay, so let me just emphasize this point. Wayne said this already, but I want to emphasize it, that this is a new federal program out of the IIJA. I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but it's only $4 million a year for a new program. What you can see is there is a proliferation of federal funding programs. And Wayne said it is comparable in goals to the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, not identical, but comparable. So what we are intending to do, and just want to see if anybody has any reactions to this, but what we're intending to do, we've reviewed it, and our intention is to not 100%, but essentially combine it with CMAQ, because the goals are so similar. And we always try to strike a balance of making these as simple and easy for the communities as we possibly can. So we want to, rather than having a whole new program and a whole new application and a whole new set of criteria for yet another relatively small program, that we would essentially integrate those. But of course, making sure Ivan and our federal partners online, making sure that we're fully complying with all the eligibility criteria for the use of every dollar, of course. So is that fairly stated, Wayne, Ben?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight that because it's new, and just see if anybody had any questions about that, or does that sound basically like a good approach?
And can I just, I mean, I assume that like my transportation, John Larson knows all about this new program and will be fully aware of what we could gain from it.
Well, yeah, I mean, knowing John, I'm sure he does.
Okay.
But we're going to be Wainwright, we're going to be sharing more information out about all of these programs in the packets with all the information. And as always, our teams are very available. And so John Larson is the Salt Lake City Transportation Director who participates in the technical advisory committees. And so all of the community staff are invited to and generally do participate in those technical advisory committees. We're going to share all this information with them by email and in those meetings as well.
Perfect.
Thank you for letting me interject.
Thank you. Excellent. So I'll just note the other in regard to the other new program on this list, that there's technical assistance available through WFRC on a rolling basis through July of 2024. So this is a temporary program, but it's got a significant amount of funding to it from the state and is basically made available to help cities accomplish the station area planning requirements that you can find under House Bill 462. So great. Let's see. You can see on the footnote on this slide, the first 5 programs on this slide are on the same time cycle, same application funding, annual application cycle. So those are the ones that you can submit a letter of intent to compete for or to apply for. So let's see, let's go to the next here. So here's a timeline in regard to those first 5 programs. You know what? Let me back up. I wanted to do one more thing on this slide, and maybe the most important part of the presentation. So Ben Wuthrich is the program lead for the first 4 programs on this slide. Meg Townsend is the program lead for the TLC program and the station area planning program. And Christy Dahlberg is the program lead for CDBG and the Community Impact Board assistance. And then Marsha White is the program lead. Well, she's the principal staff support for the Economic Development District and is also the point of contact, the only point of contact for assisting communities with pursuing funding through the Economic Development Administration. So any questions about any of these programs? All right.
Just the note that if anybody, misremembers, who am I supposed to call? Call any of us and we'll get you the right person. We are all here to help you across this panoply of programs.
Thank you. Yeah. And if, as you go to
really dig into the thesaurus for that one, and yeah,
precisely.
Great. So as alluded to earlier, for the first 5 programs on the previous slide, you'll receive a request for letters of intent at the end of the month. And after we receive those letters of intent at the end of September and identify the eligibility of projects, we'll request that the entity that submitted that letter prepare and submit an application, which will be due in early December, and which allows for evaluation of the projects over the winter, and then recommendation of the projects, working through field reviews as noted earlier, and technical criteria and so forth, and then working with the technical advisory committees and Transcom to make recommendation on funding. So lastly, here's contact information for the program leads. As Andrew mentioned, feel free to contact any of us. And also, if you're unsure of which program fits your project, go ahead and submit a letter of intent. The program leads will sort through it and figure out which programs are most suitable. And then also want to point out that in your meeting materials, there's a funding programs packet, and you can see the URL on the screen for that. It starts with a one-page overview of all the programs, and then has a table which includes the timeline for all 9 programs. So that's a good place to find the timeline for the other 4 programs. And then that table is followed by a one-pager on each of the 9 programs. So like Andrew again was mentioning, if you want more information on any of these programs, it's in this funding programs packet. So with that, I think that's all I wanted to say about the funding programs.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Wayne. Any comments for Wayne before we move forward? Because as long as I've got Wayne up there, it is that time of year where we have to self-certify our transportation planning process. But Andrew, before we do that,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
you
may
are,
I
no, you
actually-
are good.
I actually want to see if Ivan Marrero from the Federal Highway Administration is on. Is he still on? He was on. I may have just lost Ivan.
I'm
Oh,
here.
there he is. Terrific. Ivan, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm wondering,
Okay.
as we noted earlier, most of these programs, not all of them, but most of them actually are Ivan joining us from a location overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. Terrific. Thanks.
Nice. Yeah, it's getting cold up here.
Yeah, I just, most of these are federal programs, and I wanted to see if you wanted to just comment at all on sort of the rollout of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and what our local communities and UDOT and UTA should be thinking about how to maximize or capitalize on that. And just as you're thinking about that, I just want to express appreciation. Even though we have all of these different programs here in Utah, we're really fortunate to have a great team at FHWA and their partners at FTA who are always working to help us navigate the requirements that come along with these programs so we can put the funds to work. So I don't know, Ivan, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, well, thank you for those nice words, Andrew. And yeah, well, I would just say that, we just about every week there's a new program that is announced either by the secretary or by the president or by the administrator. So I can see how this could overwhelm the most advanced and prepared organizations. So what I would suggest is any questions, you can of course go to WFRC. They have very knowledgeable people there, but our office is also available to help you navigate these very difficult waters. Like it was mentioned before, the carbon reduction programs out there, and also the Safe Streets for All is another one that I would imagine many of the mayors here would be interested in, because that does provide money directly to the cities and the county. So, but all I can say, yeah, it's don't hesitate to reach out to us to help you in any way you can or explain things to you. So we just want to make sure that we can get as much money as possible as we can here into the state of Utah. So we're here to help in any way we can.
Ivan, thanks. And I'm glad you mentioned the Safe Streets for All. Wayne, maybe you can just take a moment on that, and then Ivan, we'll let you get back to your bridge inspection work. Gosh,
you.
these FHWA guys, they work so hard. It's amazing.
Non-stop. Yep. Always on the go.
Wayne.
Thank you. Yeah, as we mentioned in June, WFRC has been asked by several local governments to put together an effort to develop put together an application for this Safe Streets and Roads for All program for developing a safety action plan, a regional comprehensive safety action plan. Having that plan in place will allow local governments in the future to be eligible to apply for implementation funding from this same discretionary program. And we are on track to have that application for the plan development put submitted by September 15th, which is the deadline. And there's a planning committee with representatives from most of the counties and from several cities from across the region to help us in guide that plan, development of that safety action plan. And in fact, any community in the region is welcome to join that effort. Just reach out to us. So.
Very good. All right, Andrew or Wayne, let's self-certify or recommend ourselves to be self-certified.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as again, in your meeting materials, there's a resolution with an accompanying document outlining our proposed self-certification, which happens every year in connection with approval of the Transportation Improvement Program, or the submittal of that to the federal and highway and transit administrations. The document covers organization, organizational structure, committees, coordination that's set up through the regional council, and then outlines several aspects of the technical aspects of the regional planning process. And I mean, ranging from public involvement to air quality to data and modeling. And then talks also about a few of the key products that the regional council is responsible for, RTP, TIP, congestion management process, unified planning work program. And so the document doesn't cover everything. I mean, there's a lot of other activity, as you're well aware, that the council is engaged in. Staff are engaged in assisting local communities in their planning efforts, involvement in a variety of studies across the region. But it does outline some of the key elements that allow us to be in compliance with the federal guidance and regulations.
Very good. Thank you, Wayne. So community, we need a motion to recommend approval of our transportation planning process to the regional council.
I move that we recommend to the full council the program just mentioned by Wayne.
I will second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. I don't have any other business on there other than that our next meeting will be, it shows in your agenda that it's November 10th. That's being changed to November 3rd. So it'll be the week beforehand. Appreciate that change. With the, just a note, with the IAJA and all the grants that have become available to small cities or to cities as a whole, the National League of Cities, for those of you that aren't aware, just put out some brand new training. It's an actual program for cities to go through. I want to say it's a 16-week program to teach you how to apply for grants. And for those cities that don't have that ability or don't have a specific grant person or familiarity with going through the federal process of applying for grants, they want to make sure that we get this money as best as possible in the city's hands. And so they put out a phenomenal program, and they didn't limit it to their own members or even to small cities. They've given it to everybody. So definitely worth signing up for.
Mayor Shepherd, I'm glad that you mentioned that. We're gonna, in the newsletter that we're getting close to sending out, we typically will share information about various programs and activities, and that'll include, and Mike and I have been talking about this, that's going to include, usually over the last few months, has included always some information about federal programs. The training for small cities through the NLC that you mentioned is one of the items that we're going to highlight in our federal affairs update, so we can pass that out to send that around to everybody. I also want to make mention that in Utah, the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget is aggregating information for IIJA. They have a great website that they've set up. UDOT is doing a great job of this as well. And so what we'll do is we'll have links to that information. We actually have a site on our webpage that is trying to aggregate and share that info as well. It's I will acknowledge it's tough for any organization, you know, be a city or a county or even a transportation agency, to wade through the panoply of programs. They have proliferated in the IIJA on top of programs that already existed. And so I imagine any of you might feel like, well, you know, how do we take advantage of these things? And it's a bit of a matchmaking exercise. In that, one way to do it is you can go look through every single federal program and be like, do we have something for this? Do we have something for this? Perhaps an easier way to come at it is to say, in your own community, here is a need that we have. And then come to us or go to UDOT. I mean, really, any of us could help. If it's anything transit related, go to UTA and say, here's a need. Is there potentially a federal program that would be a good candidate for this? And we can help you do some matchmaking on that. That's the trick. What none of us want, we don't want to miss the opportunity the federal funds are available, but we sure also don't want to waste a lot of time and energy chasing down and filling out grant applications for dozens of programs that really aren't a good fit. So we're all trying to sort this out together, but I'm really glad you mentioned that, Mayor, the NLC program as well.
Well, it came out of the two committees that I either co-chair or chair, which are the Small Cities Community Council and the Fair Committee, the Finance Administration and Intergovernmental Relations Committee.
Yeah, these are chairs that these are
These are
groups
committees that I chair or vice chair.
for the
or
national
nationally.
organization. That's
So that
awesome.
was our recommendation that we get some sort of program in place to teach cities how to do this. So it's nice to see this come about and
Great
and
idea.
give cities that opportunity. So
Way to lead.
that is all we have. Yes, Kevin.
I actually had a request for a November meeting or a future meeting. You know, they opened up the Vineyard Station for Front Runner. And the governor commented how important that double tracking Front Runner is going to be for our long-term transportation. And he's right. I wonder if it's time that we could maybe invite someone from UDOT or UTA to come give this committee an update on where we're at with double tracking, what's still needed, how's the process going to play out, needs, opportunities, money, et cetera. Could we maybe do that at a November or future meeting if appropriate?
Beth, are you willing to do that in November? Or to have somebody else do that for you?
Well, I think that it's a great suggestion. I think that it would be good to have UDOT to be kind of in leading out with that, but we will be happy to be supportive of that. I think that it is always valuable to have that information. And just for your, you're right, Vineyard, we didn't just open up a station. We also did almost 2 miles of double tracking. And that is what the governor was referencing specifically there, but obviously that's applicable throughout our entire service area. So I think that it's always good to understand where some of that, where that process is and what the goal is on that. So yeah. So happy to do that. I'll coordinate with UDOT and we'll coordinate then with WFRC and try to get something.
Good idea. Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, if there's nothing else, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
When we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.